let's jump into our lead story of the day regarding nuclear Armageddon with Russia. Now, this story goes back a little bit with the President of the United States coming out and talking about the seriousness of nuclear warfare with Russia. And now the White House has come out with John Kirby saying, hey, we're pretty much saying, yeah, stuff is dicey right now and hasn't been this dicey in a few decades, and it could be nuclear warfare with Vladimir Putin. The U.S. military's top spokesperson ramped up concerns of an imminent nuclear threat with Russia, days after Joe Biden warned of a potential nuclear Armageddon. Now, we all thinking, okay, this guy's senile. Joe Biden doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Guy can't find his Oval Office half the time. He's pooting around places, gets lost, gets chauffeured by the Easter Bunny. Like, he just slipped up, wasn't on the teleprompter. But when you got John Kirby coming out and saying this stuff, folks, it makes it a little bit more impactful. Speaking at a Democratic fundraiser last week, Biden talked bluntly about the threat of nuclear attack from Russia. Quote, we have not faced the prospect of Armageddon since Kennedy and the Cuban Missile Crisis. He added that the Russian leader, Vladimir Putin, was not joking when he talks about potential use of tactical nuclear weapons or biological or chemical weapons, because his military is, you might say, significantly underperforming after invading Ukraine earlier this year. And underperforming is an understatement. I mean, the guy hasn't really advanced that much in quite some time here, and he's actually being taken advantage of in different parts of Ukraine where the Ukrainians are pushing them back. And of course, we're sending them billions of dollars to help them, so it's obviously not on their own. But Russia is not doing as well as they thought they would, and now they're putting in basically a draft where you have thousands of people trying to flee the country. And when Putin put in the draft, the flights were booked. You couldn't get out of the country, and so people were walking, fleeing. Google spikes in terms of the search bar went up, trying to figure out how you can basically evade a draft. And so people were trying to figure out how they could break family members' bones, flee the country without being caught, all sorts of stuff, folks. Well, echoing comments from the White House earlier this week, John Kirby, top Pentagon spokesperson, said Biden's comments were not based on specific new information. So we have a video clip here. I can never tell with John Kirby if he's just bluffing, if he's just being spot on. So we're going to break down this video. Let's go ahead and watch it.
And he gets a daily intelligence briefing, military updates from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. So are the statements the result of what he has heard or his own conclusions? Because those were really frightening comments.
His comments were not based on new or fresh intelligence or new indications that Mr. Putin has made a decision to use nuclear weapons. And quite frankly, we don't have any indication that he has made that kind of decision.
Time out. Then why is Biden saying this in the first place? Now, there's a couple things can be broken down here. He's using terms of new information. It very well could be old information that they had a month ago, 2 months ago, where behind certain channels, Putin's been talking like this to his generals. So it could be old information that Biden's just telling us now, which is new information to all of us. And so it makes me wonder, why are we just highlighting new information here when it could be old? So Biden could be out of line, or Biden could be telling the truth. And that's the problem with having a president that's senile. We don't know. We don't know what's going on with this guy. Okay, he tries to ad-lib things. He makes up false stories all the time. He's been carrying on false stories for decades now, i.e. about his education and other things. So who the hell knows?
Decision, Martha, nor have we seen anything that would give us pause to reconsider our own strategic nuclear posture in our efforts to defend our own national security interests or those of our allies and partners. What the president was reflecting was that the stakes are high right now, given what's going on the battlefield in Ukraine and given the very irresponsible and reckless comments made by Vladimir Putin in just the last few days. Now, look, he's also said we're not going to be intimidated. Neither we nor our allies are going to be intimidated by this, and we're going to continue to provide support and security assistance to Ukraine as is necessary.
You say you haven't seen any evidence that he has made a decision about this, but have you seen anything beyond Putin's rhetoric that leads you to believe he could do this? And if you did, what is it you would see?
We are monitoring this as best we can. And we have been monitoring his nuclear capabilities, frankly, since he invaded Ukraine again back in February. So we're monitoring this very, very closely. And what I can tell you is that through all that process, we just simply haven't seen an indication that Mr. Putin has either made a decision to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine or has done anything to get closer to that decision-making process. So we're watching it as best we can, Martha. And again, the best thing I could tell you is that we haven't done anything to change our own strategic nuclear posture. And that's really about as far as we can go. We're watching this very, very closely.
Now, I don't know if you caught on to that last little bit there, but I find it interesting that he's basically saying there's no new information. We haven't really changed our strategic plan or anything of the sort. Literally one of Russia's top nuclear submarines that's kind of talked about as doomsday submarine literally went missing. It just disappeared. Who the hell knows where it is? So this whole idea of, all this information, we don't really know, we're watching it closely. I also want to put this in perspective of our own government and kind of take this as a grain of salt. There was a time in our history, not too long ago, within the last 3 decades, where there was literally presumed to be a rogue nuke in New York City. Yes, you heard me correctly. And this is open knowledge now at this point. For days, there was presumed to be a rogue nuke in Times Square or New York City and possibly Washington, D.C. And we had government officials walking around that weren't able to tell anybody, and they got their own family members out of the area, but they had to walk around with other friends and not have a clue in terms of meeting their friends, not have a clue that there's a nuclear warhead potentially that is about to blow up in a matter of hours or days. So whenever the government says a lot of things about, this or that with nuclear warfare, we're not sure if Putin does this, we're keeping careful on this, I take it as a grain of salt because they've lied to us before and they've kept it under the radar to stop the hysteria and the panic. Quote, his comments were not based on new or fresh intelligence or new indications that Mr. Putin has made a decision to use nuclear weapons. Now, again, take it as a grain of salt because for all we know, they do have information and they're not trying to create hysteria on what Putin is willing to do. Biden's remarks involving Armageddon drew a sharp rebuke from former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, a former member of Donald Trump's White House cabinet, who is mulling a 2024 presidential run. I don't think he should run for president. Those comments were reckless, a terrible risk to American people. Kirby on Sunday also declined to weigh on a recent explosion on the bridge in Russia and Crimea, which you all saw that Ukraine ultimately took responsibility for on Putin's birthday. Now, I do kind of love the aspect of blowing up a bridge on Putin's birthday as a gift to him. And it took them a long time to build that bridge and a lot of money to do so. And based on the damage that's done, it's going to cost them a lot of money to ultimately repair that thing. And Ukraine's saying, hey, you know what? This isn't the only thing that's going to happen. So be on the lookout. But it is kind of rich, the fact that they did do it on the guy's birthday. It says here, quote, we don't really have anything more to add to the reports about the explosion on the bridge. I just don't have anything more to contribute to that this morning. They have more information. You're talking about the American intelligence here, one of the best in the world, if not the best. They have a ton of information. They know exactly what Putin's doing. They know exactly, I wouldn't be surprised if they have spies going on there in the Kremlin that are giving them intelligence back. They're able to follow these subs. They know where these subs are. So I'm curious to see what stuff is going to come out here within the next month or by the end of the year. But this is all touchy, folks. This is very serious stuff when we're talking about Armageddon here. Whenever we hear Ben Shapiro talk about it, any outlet, yes, we are trying to kind of diminish the impact of what's going on here. But I mean, you're talking the end of the world type stuff. Now, if Russia does throw a nuke at Ukraine, I don't think that we are going to nuke him back. I think it's going to be one of those of you just eat it. And you're talking catastrophic events. You're talking about radiation being blown over. I mean, there's a massive impact that goes on here, but I don't think you're talking nuclear warfare unless it's used against an ally. Then it's just game over and Russia's just going to be obliterated. If you obliterate Russia, obviously Russia's going to be firing back at everybody else. So you got a massive catastrophe going on. But I think if Russia does anything with Ukraine, I personally don't think that we're going to throw nukes back, but I do think there's going to be massive ramifications for Russia. And I wouldn't be surprised if, hey, you're ousted on the UN. And can we talk about the UN just for one moment here? You got China and Russia in there. I think there needs to be a dismantling of the UN and maybe refabricated because that place is just garbage. I'm sorry. I know a lot of people don't want to hear it, but the UN is it's ass. Okay. The stuff that they've been doing, talking crap on the United States, taking our money, talking about human rights, humanitarian rights, all this stuff. But yeah, you have literally China doing what they're doing with their concentration camps. You have Russia doing what they're doing. Russia wants to use nuclear weapons and not allow the Ukrainians to be sovereign or not allow Ukrainians to be part of NATO. All this stuff. I mean, what is going on with the United Nations? Why do we have it in the first place? Isn't it supposed to be all about peace? But yet, I mean, it barely does little to actually accomplish it. So it seems like a big waste to me. It seems like a big waste of money. It's a bunch of phoniness. And like I said, if you read Nikki Haley's book, she does a fabulous job on detailing how corrupt the UN is, how they do nothing but talk crap in front of everybody else, but then behind closed doors, they're all kissing our feet. They want our help. They need our help. But again, like I said, it needs to be dismantled. The UN is basically a bunch of nothing burger. I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Bald Brad Show. If you did, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all our future content.